What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And as you know, the NBA season has started, and with that happening, I think it's only appropriate to release my top 10 players in the NBA. And like with any top 10 list, it is subjective, and this is my personal opinion, and it is very hard to narrow it down to 10 players. Now, my main criteria comes down to 5 things. Number 1 being how these players perform in the playoffs. Number 2 being their impact on offense as well as defense. Number 3, how they perform in the late game situations and how clutch they are. Number 4, being the eye test and the intangibles and just watching the games and observing the players. And at number 5, we have consistency and how consistent these players are from the regular season all the way to the playoffs. And I also do want to mention one thing, and that is that in my list, I will evaluate a player who's been in the NBA longer and has proven more stuff over a guy who's an up-and-coming player and hasn't really proven much. So just keep that in mind when you see my list. So starting off at number 10, I have Jimmy Butler. And after the 2020 playoffs, I think Jimmy, he definitely deserves this number 10 spot, and he deserves everyone's respect. And I think it was a big surprise how well Jimmy played in the playoffs, as during the regular season, he was pretty average for Jimmy Butler's standards, only averaging 19.9 points per game, 6.7 boards, and 6.0 assists on 45, 24, and 83 splits. And throughout the year, he really could not make a jump shot outside of 12 feet, and he really struggled shooting the three-point shot. Now, one of the major things that makes me put Jimmy in my top 10 is the intangibles he brings to this Miami Heat team. He's a great leader, he has a great mentality, he never gives up, and you know what you're going to get from him on a night-to-night basis. I also think Jimmy, he has a rare skill of instilling confidence in the young guys like Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, as well as Bam, and I think him going to Miami, that is a perfect place for him to thrive, as him and the Heat organization, they both have one goal, and that is winning championships. Now, getting back to the 2020 playoffs and how Jimmy performed, he averaged 22.2 points per game, 6.5 boards, and 6.0 assists on 49, 35, and 86 splits. And those are definitely some great numbers, but I think where Jimmy really showed out was in the NBA Finals, where he averaged 26.2 points per game, 9.8 assists, 8.3 boards on 55, 31, and 89 splits. And during that final series, he would have 2 games in games 3 and 5 where he was absolutely off the charts, and he was extremely clutch for this Miami Heat team. And speaking of clutch, Jimmy during the playoffs would have 48 clutch time points, the most in the NBA, while shooting 57.1% from the field, 33.3% from 3, and 91.7% from the free throw line, with a plus-minus of plus 47, the 3rd highest for the playoffs. So with all that being said, I think Jimmy Butler, he has earned our respect, a top 10 player in the NBA. Now moving on to number 9, we have Nikola Jokic, who I believe is the best big man in the game and a top 3 passer. And Jokic this past year, he finally got into great NBA shape, and we saw that help him out in the 2020 playoffs as he averaged 24.4 points per game, 9.8 boards, 5.7 assists on 52, 43, and 84 splits. And during this playoff run, the Nuggets would find themselves down 3-1 versus Utah Jazz, but in large part due to Jokic's play, averaging 27.7 points per game, 8.0 boards, 5.7 assists on 54, 57, 100 splits. Over the final 3 games, the Denver Nuggets would find a way to claw back and win that series. And in Game 7, Jokic was off the charts, having 30 points, 14 boards, and 4 assists, and the clutch, game-winning hook shot. And the second round, the exact same thing would happen. This Nuggets team would go down 3-1 to the LA Clippers, and over the last 3 games of that series, Jokic would average 24 points per game, 16.7 boards, 8.3 assists on 52, 38, and 80 splits. And in Game 7 of that series, he would have 16 points, 22 boards, 13 assists, and he would kill the Clippers defense when they tried to double him. He would find the open man and find his shooters, and he was just spectacular during that whole series. And this 2020 playoff run, in my mind, has solidified Jokic as the best center in the NBA, and I don't think it's going to change this year, as Joel Embiid is never healthy, and he's never really ready come playoff time. Now, next up at number 8, we have Luka Doncic. Now, Luka at number 8, some people might say this is a little bit low, but as I said earlier in the video, I'm not going to move a player who's only in his second year all the way into the top 5 when he isn't as proven as guys in front of him. And that is no disrespect to Luka, as he does have top 5 talent, and he can be the best player of the 2020s decade. I just think it's a little too early to move him into my top 5. And I think over this past year, we saw Luka take a big leap from his rookie year to his sophomore year, increasing in points per game, assists, rebounds, field goal percentage, as well as free throw percentage, and we saw him finish 4th in MVP voting and 3rd in most improved player voting. And when it came to the playoffs, there was absolutely no drop-off in Luka's play, as versus the Clippers, he would average 31.0 points per game, 9.8 boards, 8.7 assists on 50, 36, and 66 splits. And during this series, he would have an epic Game 4 performance where he had 43 points, 17 boards, 13 assists, and the game-winning 3 over Reggie Jackson. And I think by the end of the 2021 season, Luka can definitely be a top 5 player in the NBA. Now at number 7, I have James Harden. And Harden this past year is once again spectacular during the regular season, averaging over 30 points per game for his 3rd consecutive year, and once again winning his 3rd consecutive scoring title. And if there's one thing Harden doesn't get enough credit for, is how consistent he is from year to year, as during the last 4 years, he has been top 3 in MVP voting each of those years. And I think Harden, he's a flawed player, and he is really frustrating to watch, but you have to commend him for being so consistent and being so great year to year. Now, in the 2020 playoffs, Harden, he would average 29.6 points per game, 7.7 assists, 5.6 boards on 48, 33, and 85 splits. And the most iconic moment from James Harden's 2020 playoff run was the game-saving block he had in Game 7 on Lou Dort. But besides that, it was once again a very, very disappointing playoff run for him and Russell Westbrook. And moving on to number 6, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo, the reigning MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. And Giannis, he had an historic 2020 season, and the Bucks were absolutely fantastic, having a 56-17 record, the best in the NBA, and they were the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But still, like many years for Giannis, it was once again a very disappointing playoff run, as they fell to the underdog Miami Heat, and during that series, Giannis, he only averaged 21.8 points per game, 11.0 boards, 5.3 assists on 50, 21, and 54 splits. And the one thing that keeps plaguing Giannis is that his play gets worse the farther we advance in the season. And this past year, Giannis, he once again struggled with the late game situations. He choked away a few games with free throws, and he made some poor decisions down the stretch that really cost the Milwaukee team a real shot at making the finals. And a lot of people might be outraged at Giannis being at number 6, seeing how he was the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year. And yes, I do think that is very valuable, but that is not as valuable as being great in the playoffs. And the guy who was really great during the playoffs, and in my opinion, took a slight edge over Giannis after his playoff performance, is Anthony Davis. And for AD, this was his first year in LA, being the 1B to LeBron James' 1A. And in my opinion, he was the best defender in the NBA, despite him finishing 2nd in the Defensive Player voting. And I thought in the playoffs, his defense was really the difference maker for this Lakers team, and it really helped them from round to round, especially in the NBA Finals, as Davis had a lot of success guarding Jimmy Butler. And if you go back and watch the tape, AD was consistently guarding 2 through 5, and he was doing it very effectively. And I think his wingspan, his mobility, his quickness, how fast he is, it really helps him be an elite defender. And the most important thing is that he's a smart defender, and he knows when to help, when to hedge, when to dive, and just when to make the right play. And really the one thing that impressed me a lot is how him and LeBron James, they really came together and formed the best duo in the entire NBA. And during the 2020 playoffs, Anthony Davis, he averaged 27.7 points per game, 9.7 boards, 3.5 assists on 57, 38, and 83 splits. And I think that, combined with his elite defensive play, that makes him a top 5 player in my opinion, and also how he played in the clutch. Now the Lakers, they didn't have many games that qualified as clutch games, but in the games that did, AD averaged 2.0 points per game, that was the most on his team. He shot 75% from the field, 67% from 3, and 75% from the line, and he had the game-winning buzzer beater versus the Denver Nuggets. And I think just the overall impact he had on every single series and the Lakers winning the championship, that makes AD number 5 on my list and better than Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now at number 4, I have Steph Curry. And Steph, he is coming off a year where he only played 5 games, and despite that, I still have him in my top 5 at number 4. And me having Steph at number 4, it's really because the respect he's earned and how the past 4 years, he's been a consensus top 5 player in the NBA, and right now at this point, I am not willing to change that based on him missing a handful of games. And I think by the end of the year, maybe Steph could fall out of the top 5, some guys could leapfrog him, but at this moment in time, Steph Curry, in my opinion, he is still a top 5 player in the NBA, and his offensive game is still elite, and he is still a great player. Now at number 3, I have one other guy who is also coming off a major injury, and that is Kevin Durant. And we haven't seen KD play basketball for roughly 18 months, but from what I've seen and what I've looked at, he is back to his old Kevin Durant form, and that is why I have him at number 3. And much like Steph, I have a lot of respect for what KD has done over the past 5 years, and him being at number 3, it's purely based on that respect. And I think by the time the 2021 season is over, Kevin Durant is going to be competing for that number 1 spot. But right now at this moment, I'm not willing to put Kevin Durant higher than number 3. So at number 2, I do have Kawhi Leonard. And Kawhi, he's still one of the best two-way players in the NBA, and he's an elite scorer. I know the Clippers had a very disappointing show in the bubble, and their team was really dysfunctional, but Kawhi, during that run, he still averaged 28.2 points per game, 9.3 boards, and 5.5 assists on 49, 33, and 86 splits. And I think this Clippers team, they were by far the most disappointing team of the season, and they were probably the most disappointing team of the decade, as coming into the year, they had extremely high expectations, and that did include winning a championship. And them not making the Western Conference Finals, that was already bad, but the way they went out, blowing a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets, that made it 10 times worse. And Kawhi, when they blew a 3-1 lead, he would only average 25.0 points per game, 7.7 boards, 5.5 assists on 41, 42, and 93 splits. And for Kawhi standards, those numbers are not up to par, and at best, they are average. So I think Kawhi at this number 2 spot, he's almost a placeholder, and I think by the end of the year, someone will probably jump him if he doesn't win a championship for the Clippers. Now at number 1, I think this is obvious, it's undisputed, and it's virtually unanimous. The best player in the NBA currently, it once again is LeBron James. And that is in large part due to him reclaiming his throne and winning his 4th championship and his 4th Finals MVP. And after an epic 2020 playoff run where he averaged 27.6 points per game, 10.8 boards, 8.8 assists on 56, 37, and 72 splits. And I think one of the things that really wasn't talked about when it comes to LeBron's 2020 playoff run is how efficient he was from round to round. In the first round, he averaged 27 a game on 60% shooting. The second round averaged 26 on 51% shooting. In the Western Conference Finals, he averaged 27.0 points per game on 54% shooting. And in the finals, he averaged nearly 30 points per game on 59% shooting. And I think a player dominating all 4 rounds like LeBron did on that high efficiency, that's why LeBron, he is once again the best player in the world, and he is going to hold this number 1 spot until someone can knock him off. So that right there was my top 10 players in the NBA. It was a very difficult list to make, and I think the most difficult part of the list was the 5 through 10 spot. I think 1 through 4, it was pretty obvious to a lot of people, and I think having LeBron number 1, that was the most obvious thing in this whole video. And like I said earlier in the video, this list could definitely change by the end of the year, but right now I feel like this list is definitely accurate in representing the top 10 players in the NBA. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.